In 1929, through the intervention of a friend of mine, common friend, who asked Mr. Gandhi to see me, you see. And so Mr. Gandhi wrote to me saying that he would like to see me. So I went and saw him. That was just before going to the Round Table Conference. And then he came to the second Round Table Conference, didn't come for the first. And he was there for about 5-6 months. And there, of course, I met him also and faced him also, you see. Then, once thereafter, he also, after the signing of the Poona Pact, you see, asked me to come and see him. So I went to see him. He was there in jail, you see. But that's all the time that I have met him. But I always say that as I met Mr. Gandhi in the capacity of an opponent, I have a feeling that I know him better than most other people because he had opened his real fangs to me, you see, and I could see the inside of the man. You see, while others who generally went there as devotees, you see, saw nothing of him except the external appearance which he had put up as a Mahatma, you see. But I saw him in his human capacity, the bare man in him. And so I say that I understand him better, you see, than most of the people who have associated themselves with him can say.
So how would you sum up what you found in him?
Well, I must say at the outset that I feel quite surprised, you see, at the interest which the outside world, Western world particularly, seems to be taking in Mr. Gandhi. I cannot understand that. You see. So far as India is concerned, he was, in my judgment, you see, an episode in the history of India, never an epoch maker. Gandhi has already vanished from the memory of the people in this country. His memory is kept up because the Congress party annually, you see, gives a holiday either on his birthday or some other day connected with some event in his life, and has a celebration every year going on for 7 days in a week. Naturally, people's memory is revived. But if these artificial respirations were not given, I think Gandhi would be long, long forgotten.
You don't feel then that he fundamentally changed the aspect of...
Not at all, not at all. In fact, he was all the time double dealing. He conducted 2 papers, one in English, the Harijan, you see, and before that, Young India. And in Gujarati, he conducted another paper, you see, which is called the Deen Bandhu or something like that. Now, if you read the 2 papers, you will see how Mr. Gandhi was deceiving the people. In the English paper, he posed himself as an opponent of the caste system and of untouchability, you see, and that he was a Democrat. But if you read a Gujarati magazine, you see, you will see him a more orthodox man. He has been supporting the caste system, the Varnashram Dharma, and all the orthodox dogmas, you see, which have kept India down, you see, all through ages. In fact, somebody ought to write Mr. Gandhi's biography by making a comparative study of the statements made by Mr. Gandhi in his Harijan and the statements made by Mr. Gandhi in this Gujarati paper. There are 7 volumes of it. You see? The people, the Western world only reads, you see, the English paper where Mr. Gandhi, in order to keep himself, you see, in the esteem of the Western people who believe in democracy, was advocating democratic ideals, you see. But you got to see also what he actually taught to the people in his vernacular paper. Nobody seems to have made any reference. All the biographies that have been written of him, you see, are based upon his Harijan, you see, and the young India, but not upon the Gujarati writings of Mr. Gandhi.
Then what were his real intentions with regard to the scheduled castes in the structure?
Well, he only wanted, you see, there are Mr. Gandhi.
Then what were his real intentions with regard to the scheduled castes in the structure?
Well, he only wanted, you see, there are two things about the scheduled caste. We want untouchability to be abolished, you see, but we also want, you see, that we must be given equal opportunities, you see, so that we may rise to the level of the other classes. Mere washing off of untouchability is of no consequence. We have been carrying on with untouchability for the last 2,000 years. Nobody has bothered about it, you see. Nobody has bothered about it. Yes, there are some disabilities which are very harmful. For instance, people can't take water, and people can't have land, you see, to cultivate and earn their livelihood. But the other things which are far more important, you see, namely that they should have the same status, you see, in the country, and that they should have the opportunity to hold high offices, so that not only their dignity will rise, but also they will get what I call strategic positions from which they could protect their own people. Mr. Gandhi was totally opposed. Totally opposed. You see?
He was content with things like temple entry.
Temple entry, that was all the thing that he wanted to do. You see? You see? Which is a very, nobody cares for Hindu temples now. The untouchables have become, you see, so conscious of the fact that temple going is of no consequence at all. You see, you live in the untouchable quarters, just the same, whether you went into the temple or whether people, just as for instance, people at one time would not allow the untouchables to travel by railways, you see, because of pollution, you see. But now they don't mind, because the railways won't make any separate arrangement. But because they travel together in the train, it doesn't follow, you see, that their life in the villages vis-a-vis the Hindus has in any sense changed. You see, whenever the Hindu and the untouchable alights at a railway train, you see, they assume their old robes. You see?
So you would say Gandhi was an orthodox Hindu?
Yes, he was absolutely an orthodox Hindu. You see, he was never a reformer. You see, and he has no dynamics in him. You see, all this talk about untouchability was just for the purpose of making the untouchables drawn into the Congress. That was one thing, you see. And secondly, you see, he wanted that the untouchables should not oppose his movement, you see, of Swaraj. You see, I don't think beyond that he had any real motive of uplift. You see, he wasn't like Garrison in the United States, who fought for the Negroes.
Now, casting your mind back to the Poona Pact, the Eurabda Pact,
Yes.
Can you remember a little of what Gandhi said to you and what you said to him?
Oh, I know it very well. I know it very well. You see, the British government had, in the original award which MacDonald had given, you see, had accepted my suggestion. I said, look here, the Hindus want, you see, that there should be a common electorate, so that there will be no separatist feeling between the scheduled caste and the Hindus. We think that if you have a common electorate, we would be submerged, you see, and the nominees of the scheduled caste who would be elected, who would be really slaves of the Hindus, not independent people. Now, I told Mr. Ramsay MacDonald that this is a sort of a thing, you see, that he might do. Give us a separate electorate, you see, give us a separate electorate, and also give us a second vote in the general election. You see? So that Gandhi cannot say that we are separated in point of election. First of all, my contention was this, that for 5 years, you see, we live separately from the Hindus, with no kind of intercourse or intercommunication, you see, of a social or a spiritual sort. You see, what can one day's cycle of participation, you see, in a common electorate do to remove this hardened crust, you see, of separatism, which has grown for centuries? It's a foolish thing to think that if two people vote together, you see, in a common polling booth, you see, that their hearts are going to change. It's nothing of the kind. Mr. Gandhi has got this madness in him. Well, let this be satisfied, you see, by this kind of a system. Give the untouchables 2 votes, you see, and give them a population representation of ratio, so that the weightage would be in terms of votes and not in terms of representatives, so that the Gandhi and others may not complain. You see, that Ramsay MacDonald accepted. You see, the award was really my suggestion. I wrote to him a letter from Naples, you see, that this is what I would like him to do, you see, so that there may be no trouble. This is exactly what he did. You see, gave us a separate electorate and also a vote in the general electorate. You see, but Gandhi didn't want that we should send our 2 representatives. You see, therefore he didn't want the separate electorate part of the award, and went on fast. You see, went on fast. Then they all came to me, they said, well, the British government said, if he agrees, you see, to abandon the award, then we have no objection. You see, but we can't abandon the award ourselves. We have given the award, we have taken all things into consideration, and we think this is the basis. You have to read Ramsay MacDonald's letter. It's a very clear statement that we haven't done anything to aggravate the separation. You see, in fact, we are trying to bridge it up by bringing the 2 sections together in a common electoral roll. But Gandhi's object was that we should not get, you see, free, independent representation. Therefore, in the first place, he said, no representation ought to be given to us. That's how he stand in the Round Table Conference. You see, he said, I recognize only 3 communities. You see, namely, Hindus, you see, Muslims and Sikhs. These are the only 3 communities that will have a political recognition, you see, in the Constitution. You see, but the Christians or the Anglo-Indians or the scheduled caste will have no place in the Constitution. They must merge themselves in the general community. That was the stand that he had taken. Well, all his friends, I know, you see, were asking him how foolish was his attitude. You see, his own friends had quarreled with him on this subject, that if you are prepared to give, you see, special representation to the Sikhs and special representation to the Muslims, who are 1,000 times superior in strength, you see, and political and economic stamina, how can you deny it, you see, to the scheduled caste or to the Christian? You see, he always used to say, oh, you don't understand our problem. You see, that's all he was saying. Alexander even, who was a great friend of his, had a serious quarrel with him, as he told me. Then that French woman, who was his disciple, I forget her name now, you see, she also had a great quarrel with him. That we don't understand this attitude. Either you say, we won't give anything to anybody. Let there be just a common role. You see, then we can understand that that's a democratic thing. You see, but to go on saying that you will give it to the Muslims, you see, and you give it to the Sikhs, you see, but not to the scheduled caste, seems absurd. You see, he could give no answer. He could give no answer. So we suggested this method. But he also didn't, in the beginning, when he wrote a letter, Ramsay, he said, no, the scheduled caste should have nothing. No representation. You see. Then his own friend said to him, this was asking for too much. You see, nobody would support you in this matter. Then Malviya and others came to me and said, well, could you not help us to solve this problem? You see, I said, well, I don't want to solve this problem by sacrificing what we have been able to get from the British Premier.
So you went to Poona.
As I said, I suggested alternative formula. And that formula was that I am not prepared to give up the separate electorate, but I am prepared, you see, to modify the thing. You see, in this way, namely, that the candidates who would stand in the final election on behalf of the scheduled caste should be first elected by the scheduled caste themselves. Sort of a primary election, you see, and that they should elect 4 people, you see, 4. And the 4 then should stand in the general electorate, you see, and let the best one come, you see, so that we get some assurance that you don't put up, you see, your own nominees, you see, but that we do get people who will express our voice in the parliament. That Mr. Gandhi had to accept, so he accepted that. You see. Of course, we had the benefit of it only in one election, in 1937. You see. There you will see that the Federation swept the poll. Gandhi was not able to get a single candidate of his party elected.
Well, did he bargain very hard at the end of his fast?
Oh, of course. He bargained and bargained. I said nothing doing. You see. I am prepared to save your life. You see. Provided you do not make hard terms, you see. But I am not going to save your life at the cost of the life of my people, you see. This is too much. How much I have labored, you see, in all this, I know very well. And I am not going to sacrifice your whim, sacrifice our people's interest, just for the sake of satisfying. Yours is a whim, you see. How can one day's common election alter the situation? Simply cannot alter the situation.
So really he worked entirely as a politician.
As a politician. He was never a Mahatma, and I refuse to call him Mahatma. You see, I've never in my life called him Mahatma. He doesn't deserve that title. Not even from the point of view of his morality. You see.